Okay, welcome. My name is Daryl Moon. I'm the founder at Certified CRM. You might have seen me talking about Salesforce Flow and Salesforce Administrator training. I've been in the ecosystem for about 8 years. And recently, as of December last year, I actually retired from full time work. So now I'm a man of leisure and I can concentrate on my uh, delivery of new training courses. So I've been busy rewriting some of my older courses and bring them up to speed with the newer updates. Anyway, today we're going to take a look at what's a relatively simple flow, but it's got some good components in it that I think you'll see some value from. So we've done the greetings. Okay, so the problem that we're going to address is we have these sales reps who every month seems to be that they want to change the close date of their opportunities. Okay, and they have to manually go through one by one and change the close dates so that the sales manager's not on their back. Okay, so our job is not to encourage them necessarily to be doing that all the time, but simply just to make life easier for them. So we're going to use the Salesforce data table, just the standard built-in one, to build a flow solution. And then at the end, I've got a question for you because there's going to be a problem with our flow that I want you to have a look. The flow itself will work fine, but there's a problem with it that if you've followed me on social media or have seen a lot of my comments about other people's flows, that might give you a bit of a clue as to what the problem is with this flow or what's missing from it. Okay, so we're bulk updating records from a data table. So we're going to build a screen flow that will display a list of records and then allow us to bulk update them. We're going to use the opportunity object on this one, but of course it could be any object. And we will update not just the close date, but we're also going to add a related task record to the opportunity as well, so that we can see why that date has actually been changed. Okay, so there's an update and there's a record creation as well. So here's the problem again. So the sales execs, they're always pushing back these close dates. Now, we're not trying to encourage this behavior, but we can make the process easier for them. And we'll also add a task in there so that it's obvious to everybody why that has been changed. Okay, so we can use the new native data table to display the open opportunities for the user. So we're only going to display open opportunities. So if they're closed won or closed lost, obviously we're not interested in changing the close date of those ones. And it's only the ones that are owned by the user who is running the flow. So from the selected records, we will update the close date and we'll also add the task. And again, we're adding that task so that we can see that it was the automation that did that change. Okay, so let's switch screens. And I've already built the flow, so I'd rather step through that with you and show you all the details than to try to build it live step by step, which I have done in the past, but can get you in trouble sometimes. So we'll first open the flow. We'll have a quick overview of it, and then we'll dig in step by step and see exactly what it does. Now, on the very first element up here, you can see it is a screen flow. The first thing we'll do is get my opportunities. And you can see that I've added descriptions to these and they appear. That's what that little box is for. Okay, so we're going to get all the open opportunities owned by the person who's running this particular flow. We'll display those, and this is where we'll use the data table. We'll enter in a new close date. And then we'll loop through the records that have been chosen from our data table. So when we display that data table, we'll have checkboxes down the side and they can select which ones they want to update. Then they add that new close date, and then we start going through the loop of all of the selected records, and we assign the values to the opportunity, which will be date plus the ID. And then we assign all the values that we need for the task as well that we're going to create. The next step is we will set a counter, which is basically a count of how many records we have in here. Because if we haven't got any, then we want to go straight to the end. If we have got some, then we want to go into updating our opportunities and then creating our tasks. Okay, so in terms of complexity, it's not that difficult. Okay, it's not too difficult. Let's have a look first at, before we jump into these individual elements, let's have a look at the variables that I've created that will be used in here in the middle part in the loop. Because in this loop, we're going to be looping through the opportunities and assigning values so that we can then update them all outside the loop. Because anybody who's done any work on flows will know that it's bad practice, certainly not best practice, that we don't, that to put a loop inside, to put a record update or a create records inside a loop. Okay, so we can't do that. But what we can do is we can set up these variables inside the loop, and then at the end, outside the loop down here, we'll do the updates. So let's have a look at those variables just before we start the detail of the elements. Now I use a very simple naming convention. It's not too complicated. And here's my first variable, and I've called it R for record opportunity. So this one is a single record variable of type opportunity. You notice that there is no allow multiples, so it's only a single one. So it's a variable of type record opportunity that we can put values for an opportunity into. It's not available for input or output because it's only used within the flow. Okay, so that's our first one for the opportunity. We also have one similar for task. Again, R for record, task, type record.
Sorry, and Daryl, we cannot see your screen.
Oh, okay. Let me stop sharing and I'll start sharing again. Did it just stop or has it not been showing at all?
Just stop for just.
I just stopped, did it? Okay. All right. I'll try just sharing just the tab.
Yeah, it's visible.
Oh, I know what may have happened. It may have been when I've been looking at the pop-out sidebar. Okay. All right. So you can see that again now?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So we've got a single record variable for opportunity, a single record variable for task, and then we've got a collection for each of them as well. So our next one is our record collection of opportunities. So this one is allows multiples. So that's the only difference. So this one will have multiple opportunities in it, and this is the one that we'll use to run our update. And then the second one is our record collection of tasks. And again, this allows multiples, and this is the one that we will use to create our new task records. Okay, so we've got 4 of them in total. So let's jump into the flow and have a look at what happens. First step, and you'll notice that we've now got this new side panel for that came out in Windows 24 configuring get records. Now, eventually all of these objects, all of these elements will have a similar panel, but at the moment just the get records, and I think update records has one as well. So what are we doing? We're getting opportunity records where these conditions are met, where the owner ID equals user $user ID. So that is the person who's running the flow. Okay, so get me all the opportunities that are owned by the person running the flow. And the stage name is not closed won and it's not closed lost. Okay, so basically get all my open opportunities. Sort them by close date and get me all records. Okay, so that's that first element. The next one is our data table. So we've just got a little description text box at the top, and then this data table is this element here on the left that I've dragged in. And I've called this one ops table, so it's just an opportunities table. I can change the label, call it my opportunities, and I've got 4 field names in there. Those are configured here. Oh, there's also a new search bar that you'll see here. That's a new Windows 24 feature as well. And I've configured the 4 columns that I want: name, stage, amount, and close date. Okay, so that gets us to display our table. Now, from a end user's point of view, when they've displayed the table, they'll be selecting with the checkbox the records that they want to update. And then they'll be setting a close date that will be all the same date for all of the ones that they select. And they do that in this field here, in this screen. Now, what I've done here is use the section element, and I've created a section here. Otherwise, what will happen is this close date will end up being full screen width field for a date, which kind of looks a bit silly on the page. Okay, so by using a section, I'm able to have an empty one on each side that measures 5 out of 12, and then just that small one in the middle. Okay, and that's got our close date in it. So there's the section with 3 fields, 5, 2, and 5, adding up to our 12. Now, there is also a validation on the date here as well, because if we're changing the opportunity close date, obviously it must be into the future. So we're going to validate that input. Here's our message that says the new close date must be greater than today. And then below that is the actual formula, which says the new close date, so the one that you're typing in here, it's got to be greater than today, okay, which we can get from $flow from the current date. Okay, so whatever date you put in here, it's got to be greater than today. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Next step is, out of this table, we actually have a return value, which is a collection of all of the records that we selected. And that's what this loop is going to use. So here we have, so our table was called opportunities table, ops table. And from that, there is another variable that is returned after we've selected those checkboxes to select the records we want, and that's called selected rows. So we don't need to create that. That's automatically there, and we're just telling our loop, okay, we now want to loop through all of those records that were selected, okay, from first to last. Okay, so we're going to loop through them. First thing we're going to do is for our opportunity, because we want to update that date, So we're going to say, and here's our single record variable for opportunity, R opportunity. We're going to say in the opportunity ID in that variable, put the ID of the current opportunity. Okay, so we're going through the loop. We've got an opportunity, poke the ID into there because we're going to want to update that one. And then in that same record variable, put the new close date. Okay, so now we've set up our first record, and that's all we need for an update is the ID and the field that we want to update. So our opportunity ID is there, our close date's there. That's all we need. We can then add that record into our collection of opportunities. Okay, so in this first two steps, operator is equals, so we're setting the values. In the last one, and you can do this as a separate assignment statement, or you can add it into here, as long as it's at the end. Now we're saying, okay, now take that R opportunity, that single one, and put it into our collection. Okay, so we add the R opportunity one into our collection of opportunities that we're going to update. Next one is similar, but a little bit more complex because we've got more values, that's all. So we're doing basically almost exactly the same thing. It's just a bit more complicated because there's more fields. So again, our single record, because we're going through the loop, one record at a time, is our record for our task, the due date. Okay, so for that, the due date for this task that we're creating is going to be today. The completed date is also going to be today. Priority will set to normal, status completed, etc. Here's one that we'll see in a minute. Description, and that'll be date changed by flow, opportunity close date. Okay, so that when we look at the details on that task, we can see who did it or why. And then finally, we're adding that single record because we've now finished assigning all the values. We're now adding that into our collection. Okay. And then we go back and we get the next record and we add the ID of the next opportunity and the date that we set, and we put them into the record collection for opportunities to update. And we do the same for the task. We keep going until we've done all of them. Almost to the end. We now need to set a counter. And so we've got a variable, it's just a number. And we're going to say that's going to equal the count of how many records there are in this collection of opportunities. Okay, so if we've gone through the loop 5 times and there's 5 opportunities in there, then our count selection will be equal to 5. And the reason why we want that is because it's pointless going and updating opportunities if there are none to update. Okay, so we've just got a yes or no, and in here we'll have it. If it's greater than 0, then that's a yes, otherwise it's a no. Okay, so if it's greater than 0, so let's say we've got 5 to update, then we'll do our update records, and we'll simply use our collection variable, RC opportunities. So that was the one that was at the end of our assignment. So after we'd added the values to the single one, we then put the single one into here each time. So we'll use that, we'll do an update on that, and then finally we'll do a similar thing with tasks. Except for the tasks, this will be a create record, whereas the opportunities was an update record.
I'm really sorry for interrupting you, Daryl. Just a soft reminder, we just have 5 minutes left.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
All right, so very quickly, couple of things that we need to do to be able to get this to work. So we look at the opportunity. We want to put this as a button on the opportunity list view. Okay, so there's 2 things that we need to do for that. It's a 2-step process. We go to buttons, links, and actions, and we create a new button or link. Okay, not a new action, but a new button or link. And I've got one here, and I've called it defer op. And the only tricky bit about this is make sure that you select list button here.
Daryl, we cannot see your screen.
Okay. How's that?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I see what happens. Yes. Okay, when I switch tabs, it doesn't necessarily move. All right. Okay, so the tricky bit here is to make sure that you've selected this list view button, turn off the headers and sidebars, and the content source is the URL, and the URL is simply flow and then the API name of the flow. Okay, so you can come back and have a look at this on the recording if you need to. That's the first part. The second part is to get it on the list view. So that creates the button. The second part is for it to appear on the list view, we need to edit this layout. And it's here, custom button, and it'll come up in available on the left, and you move it across to this side, and then it will be available. Let's quickly have a look at share this tab. Okay, so we should now be seeing that. All opportunities. Hopefully, yes, okay. All right, so now we're going to run the flow, and it's from this button, defer opportunity. Okay, so here's our table, and you can see we've got 98 items. We can scroll that list, but because we're short for time, I'm just going to select all of these edge ones. So I'm selecting those 5. I'll click next. Here's what I was talking about, the new close date. So it's a small field. I'll set these for the 30th of November, and I'll click next. And that has now been successful. So if we go back to opportunities, and here's our edge ones, you can see that the close date is now the 30th of November on all of those. If we look at one of those, we will also see that here is the task that was created. And there is that comment. So the date was changed by the flow. Okay, and the very last thing is to identify what is missing from this flow. Can anybody help me with what have I missed in this flow?
Error handling maybe. Fault paths.
Sorry, did I have anybody make a suggestion?
Error handling or fault paths.
They're saying about the error handling. Is it so?
Correct. Correct. So it's missing a fault path, and I'll just quickly show you. I've got another version here with the fault path added. Okay, so what could happen is when we try to get the opportunities, it may be that that user doesn't have access to the opportunity object for some reason. Okay, so we have a potential error there, and we will display an error message. That's probably fairly unlikely, but the more likely one is down here when we're updating the opportunities or creating the tasks.
Yeah, Daryl, we cannot see your screen.
Sorry.
And, it's just like last minute. We need to wrap up.
Yep. Okay, so here on the very last one at the end, updating the opportunities, we could have a fault where they didn't have permission to update the opportunity. And we could also have a fault on the create tasks. So on the create task, we've also done a rollback records because we don't want to create the tasks if the opportunities were not updated. Okay, so that rollback will cause both of these to be undone. And then the rollback goes, you can see the link here, it then jumps across here and displays that fault screen. So there we have it, a flow that uses a data table, has got some fault paths in it now, demonstrates some of those new features of the get records and the update records with the side panel. And I think we're just about out of time. Don't forget to get that button to display on the list view. That was a two-step process as well, is that we had to create the button first, and then we had to add that button to the list view page as well. Okay, so don't forget fault paths. They are really important because errors will definitely occur.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. It was such a lovely and informative session with you. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you again, and it's good to be back with Pakistan Dreaming again. I was here last year as well, so hopefully we'll see you again next year.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.